Sticking with travel trends, I spoke to Todd Rosenbluth, Senior Director at S&P Capital IQ, and I asked him why airlines are in the middle of a major profit boom.
Well, they don't need to compete as aggressively because now there's really one or two choices when you're trying to choose a route from one major city to another, and even just one route if you're going to some of the smaller markets. And thus you have to work with the airline, and thus they have more pricing power than they did beforehand, and they have greater control over their costs. As a result of it, they don't have to be as aggressive in marketing. It's really a good thing from an airline's perspective, and it's great from an airline investor perspective, less so if you're a consumer trying to go from one city to another.
In the days that things were bad, airlines held off on buying new aircraft, and I know they've placed orders or they're considering new orders. All the major airlines have basically orders on the books now. And some have said that the planes at Delta and American, I mean, the average age is significantly higher than probably one would like. At some point, do these airlines need to get more aggressive about upgrading their fleets to basically more fuel-efficient airplanes? And I guess ultimately that would drive profitability even some more, right?
Yeah, so it'll help them in the longer run when they're able to do that. In the short run, of course, there's cost to being able to upgrade. We're seeing capacity expansion from the major airlines. They are working towards improving the supply that they have out there, the number of planes that they can better serve consumers, because they really are, the planes are almost always full when you fly. When I fly as well, that's what happens. And that's, again, a good thing from the airline's perspective. That's great from an investor perspective, that they can be more profitable with every flight that they have. But over time, they're going to have to continue to expand, and there will be a cost.
You've got all these big airports on the West Coast aiming at airports in Asia. How profitable are those long haul? They wouldn't be adding capacity, right?
Yeah, you don't add capacity if it doesn't make sense for you to be able to do that. And again, there's demand for it. There's demand for it from U.S. citizens that want to travel to Asia to be able to benefit, again, from the strength in the dollar to be able to do that. Now, again, when you make those flights, when you have more international revenues, that can be a drag on some of these airline companies' profitability. But yeah, they wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't good business. They are a lot more rational than they used to be, again, with the benefits of consolidation.
One of the announcements that came out more recently is this sort of extended visa between China and the U.S., where if you and I wanted to go to China, we could apply for a 10-year visa and vice versa. Essentially, that eliminates all the bureaucratic paperwork of applying for a one-time visa. How much impact does that have? Something like these policies, where they loosen it up, how much of an impact does that have on a company when they say, okay, I'm going to deploy more aircraft to Beijing, or I'm going to deploy more aircraft to Shanghai because we want to satisfy this travel demand?
Yeah, well, there is demand there, and now, as you mentioned, there's now more flexibility allowing U.S. citizens to travel abroad into markets that perhaps they haven't had a chance to explore, and now using the airlines is a great way to be able to do that. And when you've got strong demand for able to do that, you can keep the prices fair. Fair from the consumer's perspective, but also fair from the airline's perspective, and getting more profitable to be able to do so. So again, all these things are opening up the profitability at the Americans, the United Continentals.
There's been a lot of talk about upgrading the infrastructure at U.S. airports. A lot of airports are either at or near capacity, and some are saying that, look, if you want this industry to grow, you've got to build new gates. You've got to build new terminals. I mean, Seattle is a problem. They have a immigration terminal that's from 100 years ago. You have to have that basic infrastructure. Is the U.S. government doing enough to invest in this?
Well, we're starting to see it. In fact, we saw, a couple of weeks ago in New York that they're going to upgrade the LaGuardia Airport, which is not a pretty place to be able to fly. Again, if you need to go someplace, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. But that should be a positive, again, for people who are flying from New York, from the East Coast, and going perhaps towards Europe, and perhaps going to other Latin American markets as well, internationally. That's a positive. We're seeing infrastructure pick up in the United States slowly, but we think that's something that, again, can be another positive for the traffic and thus for the airline companies that are widely held.
5 years from now, what will we be talking about? Will there be more airlines, less airlines? What will the trends look like?
Geographies that aren't there beforehand, and people are still going to complain that they're paying too much for their fees and they're paying too much for their plane tickets, but they continue to fly.